our Patreon request for this week, as requested by our lovely Patreon Tutbot. Only $1 a month, and you can request a movie every month to us, by the way. We watched the 2021 film All My Friends Hate Me, which is a UK-based
Is it a
thriller.
Oh yeah.
I would say thriller is the most applicable genre.
Yeah, I would also say that.
I don't know if this movie would be a comedy.
What's really funny about you saying that is I'm looking at the tags I have for it on the website, and comedy is actually I think the first tag I have for it on TMDb. That's why I put it there. And I'm like looking at it now, and I was about to say I cannot believe they have it as comedy.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like a dark comedy.
Yeah.
However, guys, I'll go ahead and tell you all about this cheeky little film we got here. So, All My Friends Hate Me is a film about Skippy. He's the birthday boy, so he goes to hang out with his posh rich friends at their daddy's mansion. But things are ruined when they bring along some rando that they met at a bar. From here, we watch as Skippy is filled with dread as strange interactions with his friends and the rando continue to compound until it is simply too much for him to bear. So he murders the rando and then he proposes to his girlfriend. She says no, but actually yes.
Yeah, I don't think he murders him in the end. Tanner, what's your haiku?
Awkward birthday boy. Friends acting sus all movie. Oh, coincidence?
I think not.
I was trying to big brain this movie, but it turns out this movie did not require any big braining. It was very not big brain at all. Because I thought eventually, like, the random they brought along would be, like, some kind of mental projection of Skippy's, and that wasn't it at all. I just like how this movie basically turned into, no, this guy is a self-conceited asshole that thinks everything's about him and can't take a fucking joke at the same time. So he just slowly loses mental sanity over the course of the entire movie, and we just find out that it's not his friends that are being weird and fucking changing, it's just this guy and his perception of what's going on around him that makes it seem like awful things are happening.
Yeah, and how'd you like the film, Dylan?
Like I said, I tried a lot of the movie trying to big brain it. It didn't make me hate the movie. I thought it was an enjoyable watch. I was definitely trying to figure out what was going on. I knew there was a deeper message going on here, and then there wasn't. They just revealed at the end, like, the girlfriend's like, you need to learn how to take a fucking joke, and I was like, oh. Yeah, I guess when you take this film from the perspective of this guy, it is very self-explanatory now, isn't it?
I mean, they are also just not treating him very well, for the most part.
At the same time.
But it also ties into what I've seen a lot of people say about this movie, and it's mostly just he's changed as a person. Like, when you have, like, really close friend groups, especially, like, really casual ones where nobody's really that mature with things, you guys will be just mean to each other. You'll make, offensive jokes and shit like that, and just kind of poke fun and shit at each other.
Yeah, like a common thing that people have said when watching this podcast is like, man, you guys are really mean to Dylan.
Yeah, exactly. Dylan is Skippy. So basically, people basically just say that, like, he has obviously matured a lot and his friends really haven't. They're kind of still the same people for the most part as they were in college when they're still primarily friends in that friend group form. But he's matured a lot, obviously. He had like a massive character arc and like became a better person or something when he got out of college. And because of that, he just doesn't really mesh with their style of comedy or whatever they're trying to do. And they try to throw it onto him, but also he's not sticking anymore because he's just changed as a person. Plus, he wasn't taking his meds.
I'm gonna kind of disagree with you there because they like make it a point at like 2 points of the movie to be like, oh no, they've matured and it's actually him who is kind of immature.
I did catch that note for a hot second. My big thing here was, because here's where, like, the gray lines ensue, is where he talked himself, and this could go back to, like, the whole world centers around him. He's remembering details that they don't remember, and he's not remembering a single thing of what they remember. Which goes to show, is it, like, memory loss? Like, who's the memory loss on? Because obviously they did some, like, drugs and alcohol and fucked up shit when they were younger. So I'm hard-pressed to believe that they all forgot and he remembered, but it's kind of up for interpretation. It's kind of my general consensus
it's
here.
important to keep in mind, we see in this film that our main boy here is also a bit of an unreliable narrator as well. Like, we don't know how much of, like, what is actually happening here is, like, just kind of in his head and, like, how bad these interactions are, like, actually, like, you know, the way that he's framing them in his mind here. Because, like, I don't know about you guys, but, like, you know, for me personally, there'll definitely be plenty of interactions where it's, like, in the moment I feel like, oh, holy shit, that was some tense stuff right there. Oh, my gosh. But then, like, you know, later in retrospect, it's like, oh, that was, like, no fucking big deal whatsoever.
Yeah.
Also, again, I don't really know how much we're supposed to take from it, but, like, again, he is off his, like, anxiety meds.
I thought those
I don't
were
know how much that really
joke.
affects him, or if there's some...
Like that, like a joke in that they don't actually do anything. Because they were, like, what they were called herbal calms. I thought that was a bit where it's like, yeah, these are complete placebos that don't actually impact it. So it doesn't matter that he hasn't been taken.
I didn't catch that detail that was said. Also, back to the previous point with what Tanner was like combating me about like the moral thing. I don't think him specifically being the one that matured in this scenario is like. I think it's mostly just them kind of shifting apart as people and like what they view things as.
Yeah.
It's like they stayed more consistent in like their style of comedy or whatever than he has. Is the bigger thing rather than maybe being a mature thing.
I can agree with that. I didn't like this movie. I'll just say that off the bat. So it's like a horror comedy basically, and I think a big thing for me is that like the premise just doesn't work for me. Because like what I was interpreting it as I was watching it is I was like, okay, this is supposed to be like a horror movie where the monster is anxiety. And as someone who doesn't deal with anxiety almost at all, I just, like, I cannot get into the movie at all. I do think, well, I suspect if I watch it a second time, I would like it a lot more, because then it would come across as a comedy far more to me, since I would know that ultimately there's nothing behind any of the interactions. But the first time you're watching through, you're like, oh man, maybe something is weird, because, you know, they're very specifically framing it so that you do go, oh, something is up. But yeah, this just from the very basic premise, this movie did not work for me. And so even though I think the execution was pretty solid, and I think the writing is pretty good, it's not in service of anything that interests me.
I think Tanner's just maybe a little too dense here, okay? Because I feel like, you know, the way in which the writing is, you know, kind of like done here and like the character interactions themselves, I definitely feel like they're framed in a way that's supposed to like kind of give you that sense of like what it's like to have this sort of like social anxiety and stuff like that. So even people who don't experience that personally are able to relate to the character much more when these things are happening.
Yeah, I mean, two quick thoughts here. The first one being, I don't know if this was like something that happened to you guys. I constantly, when this movie would like let us venture out in our own thoughts, and then it would grab us and snatch us back to Skippy's like perspective, like point of view. Like, you think that the movie's going this way, and they're like, no. Remember, this movie's about like after the movie's over, this movie's about Skippy. Remember, this is how he sees it. This is how he would react. So we're gonna frame the movie in his frame of mind. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. And one thing that also falls flat with me is when they try to make a horror comedy. When you guys told me it was a horror comedy, those are just such polar opposites where I know it's either going to do one or the other, because I don't think you can pull off both successfully in the same movie. So either one's going to fall flat, or in this case, I think both fell flat, where I guess I was, you know, it was a suspenseful movie, but when I realized nothing, like about halfway through after I realized nothing's actually going to happen, I lost that horror aspect, and then this movie didn't really get me to laugh at all, so the comedy aspect also fell flat. So it didn't really accomplish either of those goals.
Well, this movie really worked for me, if anything. We've got two negative Nancys here. I'll even us out a little bit. Obviously the production, from a production standpoint, this movie is really good. I think the acting, the writing, the cinematography is all really solid. I like the general idea of this movie, too. It's very non-conventional with its approach, which I can appreciate a lot. I actually don't know if I've ever really heard of a horror movie or something like this structured this way, which is cool. Also, this movie definitely left me feeling a little weird after I was done with it. Like, I hopped into like a Discord call with my brother and some other friends after it, and I felt like very conscious about the way I was acting. Which I don't. Tanner's giving me like, you're a fucking loser look right now.
You get affected by movies? What the fuck is wrong with you?
But no, it just made me think about stuff a lot like that, and I think that's cool that a movie can like kind of break that barrier.
I do think this just kind of backs up my point where I'm like, I don't really deal with social anxiety, so I couldn't glom onto anything in this movie. I think it's fair to say Jackson and Nico, out of the four of us, are the most socially anxious people here, and you guys like the movie, so.
I mean, I hide it very well.
I feel like generally I'm able to hide it decently enough. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when we got to the big twist at the end of the film, I was very worried about it because I did not like the twist initially when he reveals that, like, are you that little girl's brother who I murdered all those years back? Because I was like, well, there's no build up to this whatsoever. How are we supposed to, like, figure out that this is what's been going on? But no, then the double twist on top of that of like, what? No. What the fuck are you talking about? I thought that was fantastic. I was a big fan of that because, like, the actual twist, he's just that fucking magician or whatever that they saw at that party all those years ago. Like, that is something that they actually do set up throughout the movie. And so that being the reality of it made it fantastic, I thought.
Yeah. See, and I thought, it's funny you bring that up because I think that's actually what sealed it for me in the sense that this was a really good movie because it really just goes to show, like, man, he's so self-conscious about everything and the way people view him and the way people... Because, like, all throughout the movie, he's like, oh, did you tell the new guy that I'm shy? And they're like, no, like, why would you say that? And then it just goes to show, like, at the end when he, like, admits to this big, egregious thing that he did, he is just so, like I said, concerned about himself and his well-being. And then they're like, no, this is just that guy we mentioned that you forgot about all those years ago. And then, like... Then you're like, oh, well, maybe, yeah, so that's what's wrong. He's just a fucked up person, and that's what the premise of this movie is, so...
Yeah, he gets, so railroaded with this idea that, like, this guy is, like, out to get me or something like that. There's something going on here. That even, like, when he's going through the guy's stuff, and he finds, like, the wizard hat, he just throws it to the side. He doesn't acknowledge it whatsoever, even though it's like, oh, yeah, if I, like, paid attention to what my friends were talking about earlier, I can maybe, like, connect some dots here with what's going on.
Yeah.
I think this movie does a really good job of putting us in the main character's perspective too, because I don't know if you guys probably picked up on this when you were watching it, but just the atmosphere of everything really follows pretty closely with how things were from his perspective. Like, the movie starts off kind of uncomfortable just from the first two interactions he had, and then it just slowly keeps building and building and building and building as we go through scenes, and finally his girlfriend comes, and immediately it's like a crazy amount of weight is taken off. Like, everything is so much more calm. It honestly seems like it's kind of flipped into the perspective of everyone's cool with the main character again, and they don't like the fucking magician guy, like they're shutting him down a lot. And it's because he found, like, he's got something to latch onto finally. Like, after all of this time, he finally has somebody to, like, grasp onto. It's kind of like his rock in this sense. And then, of course, he's brought right back into the fucking trenches with, like, the big reveal, which I think is really cool. I think they do a really good job of, like, putting us in the main character's shoes, which is, like, the whole point of this movie is to make us, like, empathize with his character and kind of get sucked into his realm of thinking. And I think they do a really good job with that.
The ending, for me, kind of plays into my complaint where, like, to me, it comes across as, like, way too revealing that, yes, you're watching a movie and we very intentionally plan things out, because it's like, oh, he's wearing a bag on his head because, in our main character's mind, he choked out the girl with the bag. He's like, no, it's this random other thing. Why were you barking? No, it's this random other thing. Like, it's just, it's too convenient to me, and it just very much comes across like, yeah, you're watching a movie. We did these things, but it's actually these other things. Haha.
And I think you need to stop drinking that fucking haterade for 1 second here. Give us a positive about this movie, other than the production.
And also, like, I genuinely had a hard time understanding a lot of the characters
That's not a positive.
because they're British.
I did. You guys said I needed subtitles. I understood them perfectly.
Yeah, I understood them pretty fine throughout the whole thing as well.
Our speakers are fucking dog shit, too. Our setup right now is horrible. Like, it's literally just 2 speakers behind us on top of the floor, so they're just vibrating the entire house, which muddles everything and makes it sound like ass, which is not helping anything.
A positive. I mean, yeah, I always, it's shot well, the acting is fine.
Fine, that's a pretty good positive right there.
Alright, well, I guess with that, let's roll into the ratings.
I was just going to say, like, the final thing, if this movie definitely seems like it'd be really fun to do a second watch of, just from, like, having that first perspective and then just going back into it and see all the, like, the details you miss. It definitely is the type of movie that lends itself to that, and I probably will watch it. again ASAP. I want to find another friend to like blind watch it with. I was trying to con Tanichi into watching it with me. Anyways, Dylan.
Oh, me first? Yeah, you guys said that I was hating on it a lot. I didn't actually hate this movie. I really liked this movie. It was super solid. I like how it reeled me in and got me so involved in its narrative and its storytelling. I gave this movie an A+.
Holy shit, Tanner, you want to take us down a little here, dude?
Yeah, I gave it a D+.
You're a psycho, Jackson.
Yeah, actually, I like this movie a lot. I think this is one of my favorite horror, quote-unquote, movies we've seen. I don't know if I qualify it as a horror.
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of a thriller.
It feels like a horror at the start without knowing what's going to happen, and then, you finish it and you're like, okay, this wasn't a horror. It's just really fucking stressful. I actually surprisingly gave this movie an S-. That might change. I might drop it a little lower, but I actually really enjoyed this movie, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I feel like there's probably more I should have said, but I lost it because I never wrote it down.
Yeah, I wrote down quite a lot personally, and I did not get to a lot of this shit. But, that's fair enough. I don't just want to be gabbing at you guys this entire time. I thought this was a really solid film. It's very creative. The idea of social anxiety and spinning into this suspense-fueled narrative is really creative. I enjoy that a lot. I'm going to give this an A tier.
Ooh.
Jackson, you muted yourself.
And that puts it at an A- overall. I thought I clicked my button to unmute. Whoops.
Woohoo! A-. That's
A- is honestly pretty solid given we have a fucking D+ mixed into there.
Yeah, surprisingly, it's not me this time.
True. I was very curious how you were going to react to this movie, Dylan. I'm glad that you acted positively to it.
It was fucking awesome.